The Ben Garcia Show. Yeah. Best show in the land. Yup. Listen. Come and get your information from Ben Garcia. Get the latest on your quarterback, running backs, and receivers. Tune in, so any other show you don't need them. Any news that he giving out, please just believe him. Giving out the latest prediction and top-notch analysis. Wanna hear the truth, better have thick skin like calluses. The latest move that your team just made can be damaging. The dudes ain't speaking no facts, they just be rambling. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. Yeah. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show. Go get the cameraman.
What is up? Welcome in to yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. However you're listening, however you're watching, maybe it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts for free on the iHeartRadio app, or again, you're that person that wants to tune in on YouTube, wants to watch me give angrily faces and shake my fist at teams, or give some praise occasionally. Occasionally, we do that on the Ben Garcia Show. Any way you listen, any way you consume, thank you so much for making us a part of your week. Sorry we missed last week. I was out of town. I was at Oklahoma. Boomer Sooner. Watched them take on West Virginia. Kind of made me a little bit of a Sooner fan, if you will. With all that being said, there's a lot of things to get into. We're going to talk a little bit Justin Herbert. I want to dive back into that conversation. Little Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, Ohio State, this weekend, the big game. And Caleb Williams, are we so sure about him? Is he a generational prospect? We'll get to that all in just a second. But before, we had a huge game last night, so let's react to that. The Chiefs and Eagles played last night in a Super Bowl rematch. This isn't really an instant reaction. It's like a delayed instant reaction. I went to bed right as that game ended last night. It's about 4 a.m. where I'm at in Phoenix, Arizona. So this game ended like 6 hours ago. So a delayed instant reaction, if you will. And just as I kind of thought, the Eagles would win this game. They were underdogs in this game by 3 points. Took me a second to remember how many points they were underdogs. And every game for the Philadelphia Eagles looks exactly the same. That's the story of this game. That's the story of this season. They lose a bad game to the Jets. It's a burn-the-tape game. Everyone gets one burn-the-tape game. I told people not to overreact. Some of those picks, not really Jalen Hurts' fault. He's more of a gamer quarterback. He doesn't have all the hard skills you would love him to have. He's a little small. Doesn't have the best arm in terms of arm strength. It doesn't matter. This guy's just a worker bee. Doesn't care what it takes to win. It really just seems like Jalen Hurts, all he cares about is winning. And he didn't have a particularly good game last night. QBR, for those of you who care about that, 37. Passer rating, 64. 14 for 22, 150 yards. Nothing went the Eagles' way. Jalen Hurts was not dialed in. A.J. Brown, 3 receptions. Sorry, A.J. Brown, 1 reception for 8 yards, a complete non-factor, shut down by that Chiefs defense. And let's talk about that Chiefs defense. The Eagles, again, faced a steep mountain to climb. Chiefs defense is one of the best in the NFL. Gives up 283 yards a game. That's 5th best in the NFL. Excuse me, that's 4th best in the NFL. Allows 16.4 points per game. It's one of the ranks amongst some of the best in the NFL. The 3rd best scoring defense, the 4th best in yards allowed. The Chiefs defense has been dominant all year. It's what the Chiefs have mostly hanging their hat on. The Eagles had dug themselves a deep hole. Jalen Hurts wasn't playing well. Sacked 5 times. The offensive line was struggling against that elite Chiefs defense. We're not used to calling it elite because it usually never is, but now it is. Spags has those guys playing with their hair on fire. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, George Karlaftis, obviously Chris Jones, Nick Bolton is there as well. It's actually a pretty star-studded Chiefs defense if you just look into the nuts and bolts of it. Nothing went their way. Run game was so-so, kind of abandoned at times, looked good towards the end. Jalen Hurts not good. Offensive line not good. A.J. Brown a complete non-factor. Devonta Smith without a long 41-yard completion. to set up the tush push was a complete non-factor as well. And that brings me to my next point. Situationally, Eagles are just more buttoned up than you. You cannot leave this team hanging around, because if you do, you will lose. There's no team in the NFL that wins better ugly than the Philadelphia Eagles. There's no team in the NFL that is situationally better and more buttoned up than the Philadelphia Eagles. If you took just the first 3 quarters of this game and you went to bed, could have went to bed thinking, yeah, the Chiefs are going to win this game. It might be close. It's a Super Bowl rematch. There's a lot of feelings there. But the Chiefs won this game. It's just not what happens. The Eagles are the best team in the NFC. They're the team to beat. I've been pounding that drum all year long. Niners fans are not happy with me because I've been completely right about their team. To a lesser extent, they're still a really good team. But I said they'd take a step back, and they have. Of course, they beat Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that means that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I digress there. There's no team better than the Philadelphia Eagles situationally. All things can go wrong, but it doesn't matter, because in the last 6 to 7 to 8 minutes, all the way up to the full fourth quarter, they are buttoned up, they get situational stops, they get big-time catches, and they're just the best team in the NFC, and they should be the front runners to win the Super Bowl this year. In a crowded Super Bowl bubble, the Eagles have separated themselves from the rest of the league. That brings me over to another team. Let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs here. Situationally, the Chiefs have just been so-so this year, and it's not Patrick Mahomes' fault. Patrick Mahomes is not the reason that they lost this game. Patrick Mahomes at one point threw a ball cross-body to Jalen Watson. Let me make sure I'm getting the name. Justin Watson. I was right the first time. Dropped it in a bucket to where even Troy Aikman and Joe Buck said, whoa, that guy can really sling it. Patrick Mahomes is not the problem. Andy Reid is not the problem. Andy Reid continuously puts players in positions to succeed. The problem is they're just too Patrick Mahomes dependent. There is no player that can overcome as much as they're asking Patrick Mahomes to overcome offensively. Patrick Mahomes can put the ball in the breadbasket. But if you're just not going to catch it, I'm looking at you, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. What is Patrick Mahomes going to do? I said earlier in the year, although I was wrong, I said this looks like a 10-6 team. It's probably going to look more like a 14-3 team, a 13-4 team, maybe probably even less than that, probably 12-5. Somewhere around there is where the Chiefs will finish. So I thought they'd take a step back this year, which wasn't a hot take. I think a lot of people kind of thought that as well. But they're just not as good as they were last year. The receivers are just bad. Marquez Valdez-Scantling dropping a wide-open walk-in touchdown. Travis Kelce's looks to show his age just a little bit. Travis Kelce is still a top 3 tight end in the NFL, but he's probably not the best tight end in the NFL anymore. T.J. Hawkinson's looked really good this year. Mark Andrews, before going down with an injury, looked really good this year. He's probably in the top 3 conversation, but he's not the undisputed one anymore. Travis Kelce's 34 years old. We just forget how old he is because he's kind of a young, vibrant soul. He's dating Taylor Swift. He's very loud on podcasts. He's very fun on social media. He's a great interviewer. He's getting older. He was injured again last night for the 15th, 16th, 17th time this season. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're obviously Super Bowl contenders, but if you told me the Chiefs are the field, normally I'd take the Chiefs to win the AFC. But in a crowded AFC, the Chiefs just kind of look meh to me. Because in 2023, the Chiefs' defense is awesome. But in 2023, defense no longer wins championships anymore. So it doesn't matter how good the Chiefs' defense is. It's not going to stop Lamar Jackson and other quarterbacks in the AFC, or it's not going to stop a team in the Super Bowl with an elite quarterback. It's just not going to happen. They're going to bail themselves out and be able to tread water for a little bit because they might play Kenny Pickett in the first round of the playoffs. But when you see a Lamar Jackson, a Jalen Hurts again, a defense can't hold a team down forever. Patrick Mahomes is not the issue. They had 10 3-and-outs coming into this game. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, the wide receivers dropping balls, Travis Kelce showing his age, just doesn't look good for the Chiefs right now. I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl. I don't expect them to make it to the Super Bowl. Maybe they do. Maybe they pull a rabbit out of their hat. But Andy Reid continuously puts players in positions to succeed. But it just doesn't matter. Because if you're not catching the football, if you're not good situationally, if Jawan Taylor can't figure out how to stay before the ball gets snapped, this is going to be a continuous issue for the Chiefs. The Eagles look great. The Eagles situationally look awesome. The Chiefs do not. They have big-time players to make big-time plays. Patrick Mahomes can't throw the ball to himself. With that being said, I don't expect the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't expect the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl this year. The wide receivers are not going to be able to help Mahomes out like a Tyreek Hill used to do, like Mecole Hardman could do when he was the third wide receiver, like Travis Kelce could do in his heyday. This team has issues, and I'm not so sure they're solvable to be able to win a championship. My patience is starting to run really, really thin for Justin Herbert, but I'm not selling my Justin Herbert stock just yet because to blame him for the loss against the Packers is just not doing your homework. Keenan Allen drops a pass, drops a touchdown. Quentin Johnston drops a pass, drops a touchdown. He continuously never has his weapons. Mike Williams is out again. The offensive line is not as good as it used to be in recent years. Maybe they have more issues on the offensive line than they thought. And then the way you can tell if a coach is at least a competent head coach, maybe not win a Super Bowl, but a competent enough head coach is, does he get his side of the ball correctly? And Brandon Staley and his defense is awful. Tied for 8th most in points a game given up. Gives up 393 yards per game. A second ago, we just talked about the Chiefs defense, who's one of the best in the NFL. This defense for the Los Angeles Chargers is 2nd worst in yards given up and 8th worst in points a game given up. Austin Eckler looks like he's still a good running back, obviously, but the burst is just not there anymore. It's just not there anymore. There's a clip on social media where a guy basically says, this clip is not slowed down, and it's just Austin Eckler taking a stretch to the left and just getting caught by linebackers, linemen, some safety, easily, with ease. He's moving his legs just slower than he used to. He's not as quick as he used to be. The offensive line's got issues. Quentin Johnston can't catch a pass. Brandon Staley can't help his defense. Keenan Allen drops touchdown passes. So if I'm not going to blame Patrick Mahomes for losing last night to the Eagles, then I can't blame Justin Herbert. I can't put completely on Justin Herbert that loss on Sunday, which was ugly. So here's what I will say. Justin Herbert, although my patience is starting to run a little thin, and it's not with Patrick Mahomes because he has 2 Super Bowls and he's been to 3, so I've seen it with Mahomes multiple times. I oftentimes see Justin Herbert struggle in big moments when they need a play. He's got no problem putting points on the board, but it's that situational football. He's just not great at it. So I'm not here to condemn Justin Herbert. I really like Justin Herbert as a franchise quarterback. But he's consistently put in this top 5, top 6 quarterbacks, and he's probably still in mine. But you got to win more games. You can't consistently lose games to Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott, and Jordan Love if you're going to be ahead in the rankings on those guys. So the haters are a little right on Justin Herbert because Brandon Staley didn't blow a 27-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He wasn't on the field playing that game. Justin Herbert was. And Justin Herbert wasn't particularly good when they were blowing a 27-0 lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It doesn't matter how bad their defense is. You need to be able to protect a lead, stay on the field long enough to chew up enough clock. So it's both sides of the coin here. I'm still team Justin Herbert. I'm not selling my Justin Herbert stock just yet, but my patience is starting to grow a little thin. But when you bake in the Keenan Allen drop for touchdowns, Quentin Johnston dropping a touchdown, dropping a walk-in touchdown, Brandon Staley being a complete buffoon of a head coach, Austin Eckler does not look the same. The burst, the juice for Austin Eckler is not there anymore. And the fact that his front office consistently goes cheap on head coaches, the Spanos family consistently going cheap on head coaches, Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, I lost his name for a second, Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn. It only makes sense for the Chargers to fire Brandon Staley, see what they have in Kellen Moore, let that work and bake a little bit for the rest of the season. If things get better, maybe you get a cheap option again in Kellen Moore. But this Spanos family, the Chargers front office, is not going to change. They're not going to go get Jim Harbaugh. That's not who the Chargers are. They could have had Sean Payton this year. Sean Payton wanted that Chargers job more than he wanted to deal with Russell Wilson, who appeared washed last season, and go to Denver and rather stay in very sunshine and fun LA and have a quarterback in Justin Herbert who may or may not be better at this point than Russell Wilson. So when you bake in Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Brandon Staley, Austin Eckler, and the fact that the front office isn't willing to spend on head coaches to help their young quarterback, it's hard to condemn Justin Herbert. Although he has some sins on his record, the 27-0 blown lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs, that's on Herbert. You have to win that game. You can't blow that game. I still see it there. The arm talent is awesome. He's able to make throws that maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the NFL can actually make. The Patrick Mahomeses, the Joe Burrows. Maybe you throw Josh Allen in there. Justin Herbert, big, strong, huge athlete, huge arm, can make all the throws. Sometimes you wonder what he's doing when he throws a boneheaded pick, but that happens with most quarterbacks in the NFL. You can't nitpick there. So Justin Herbert, still in my top 6 of quarterbacks. My patience is starting to run thin, but you cannot properly, above all the other issues of the Chargers, the front office, the wide receivers, above all other things, you cannot judge Justin Herbert until he gets a new head coach. Because Brandon Staley is the biggest problem for the Los Angeles Chargers. It's not Justin Herbert. Caleb Williams is probably the best quarterback in the draft. I'll concede that. I'm not going to be that guy that says Caleb Williams is not great. He's behind Bo Nix. He's behind Drake May. He's behind Michael Penix Jr. Like, that's stupid. So Caleb Williams is probably the best quarterback in the draft. But are we 100% sure he's a home run, slam dunk, Andrew Luck level prospect? I'm not so sure about all that. All the USC fanboys were in my mentions for weeks telling me I have no idea what I'm talking about when I've been pointing out some red flags for Caleb Williams. He's out in the stands crying. He's out in the stands crying after a third loss that wasn't more consequential than the second and first loss. He was not getting into the Pac-12 championship game. He was not getting into the college football playoff. So crying and saying you want to go home and cuddle with your dog and watch movies, there's nothing wrong with going home and crying and cuddling with your dog and watching a movie. That's perfectly fine. I got no issues. We've all got guilty pleasures. I've got them as well. That was weird to admit publicly. That was strange. So when I said red flag, there was USC fans in my mentions saying, oh, you've never played a sport before. You don't know what you're talking about. You've never even touched a field. It's always the fat guys. For some reason, people call me fat. It's always the fat guys who have an opinion on sports. Like, no, that's weird behavior. You shouldn't do that. Especially Caleb Williams, who came after Max Duggan for crying. Maybe Caleb Williams peaked a little too early. Caleb, over the last month, him and the USC Trojans have lost 5 of their last 7 games. 65% completion percentage, 2,030 yards, 9 touchdowns to 4 picks. Not bad numbers. Those are not bad numbers for Caleb Williams. Generational prospect, John Elway, Andrew Luck type level prospect. Those numbers don't scream awful. Again, not here to condemn Caleb Williams. But is he John Elway? Is he Andrew Luck? He's not carrying his teams to victories. Wasn't good against U of A few weeks ago. Was awful against Notre Dame. He's been able to stay away from picks. But if you are the consensus number 1 overall pick, and USC has talent, maybe not defensively, but USC has some talent. This is the University of Southern California. This is a very prestigious organization, a very prestigious college, very prestigious athletic program. It's hard to just be like, well, he's got nothing to work with. Like, no, Josh Allen had nothing to work with in Wyoming. Carson Wentz had nothing to work with at NDSU. Jared Goff had nothing to work with at Cal. Aaron Rodgers had nothing to work with at Cal. Caleb Williams has things to work with at USC. So prior to this season, if you were the Arizona Cardinals and you had the number 1 overall pick, which could still happen, and you have Kyler Murray, and you could choose between Kyler Murray or Caleb Williams, and the Cardinals said, you know what? We're going to keep Kyler Murray. Prior to this season, and they put that pick up for sale, you could have called the Washington Commanders and said, we want Montez Sweat, who was on the team at that time. I'm well aware he's on the Bears now. Terry McLaurin, 4 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and a 4th. And you may have Caleb Williams. And the Commanders would have phoned in that call and made the trade happen instantly. Because that is what Caleb Williams was worth prior to this season. Now, because the inflation cost and what quarterbacks cost now, and I say inflation not because of Biden economics or Trump economics, I mean because it just has consistently gone up over the years. I mean, Trey Lance got 2 first-round picks. So maybe Caleb Williams still gets a package like that, but it's in question. It's in question. Caleb Williams, I'm not so sure. He was painted as this amazing leader, this elite talent, this guy who will take you to the promised land. And he has not delivered there. And emotionally, it's just been weird. Crying in front of everyone was weird. Saying you are going to go home and cuddle and watch shows with your dog because you're so sad, that's weird. Your quarterback shouldn't be saying things like that. He's supposed to be your fearless leader. You know what? We'll get him next time. That's who Caleb Williams should be. Ducking out on your media availability? Dude, you haven't proved anything. This is a guy who is leaking that he didn't want to get picked by some teams. He was just going to stay in college, right? Or that he wanted ownership of teams. That was a story that got out there. Dude, you haven't proved anything. Ducking on your media availability? You think that's going to work in New York? Say Caleb Williams goes to the Giants. They just lose a pivotal game to make the playoffs, and Caleb Williams was awful in it. You think that's going to fly in New York? You think you're going to be able to duck out on a presser? Dude, this isn't Idaho. This is USC. This is New York Giants. Football. Prestigious organizations. Caleb Williams, a slam dunk, home run level generational talent? I'm not so sure about that. Sure, he's probably the best quarterback in the draft. Don't take me for an overstated, nonsense talking head. Caleb Williams is definitely the best quarterback in the draft. But a slam dunk, home run, can't miss, Andrew Luck level prospect? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. If Michigan beats Ohio State this weekend without their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, who is 10 times the head coach Ryan Day is, although Ryan Day does well against top 10 matchups. He's got a great record there. But Ohio State fans, if they lose to Michigan this weekend without their head coach on the sidelines, it should be crickets. Michigan has surpassed you recently. Ohio State fans are convinced that because of the stupid SeatGeek sign-stealing scandal that Michigan has surpassed them. No, that's not the case. Michigan is just the better franchise, the better organization, the better football program for the better part of over a past couple of years. Michigan's just better. And if they win this weekend without their head coach on the sidelines in what is the stupidest scandal in college football over the last 20 years, it's up there with the Reggie Bush losing his Heisman for selling his namesake, which had nothing to do with his play on the field. Firstly, there's so many narratives you can run with this. Everyone is sign stealing. Sure, Michigan did it probably worse than everyone else. They had guys on the sidelines. Everyone changes up their signs. No one keeps the same signs all year. That's just stupid practice. So yeah, maybe Michigan had a couple of signs, but Ohio State, Purdue, those other schools had Michigan signs as well. Maybe not to the extent Michigan did. But if Ohio State fans truly believe the only way, the only reason Michigan was beating Ohio State the past couple years was sign stealing, dude, cry me a river, build a bridge, and get over it. The second Jim Harbaugh got a quarterback up to his speed and his standards, and J.J. McCarthy over the past couple years has dominated college football. No championships, that's a Georgia thing, but has dominated the Big Ten and mostly over the past 2 years, most of college football. J.J. McCarthy, once he got Jim Harbaugh, once he got Nate to the system, has just been awesome. And that's why Michigan's better than Ohio State. They're just better than you on the field, and that's why you continuously lose to them over the past 2 years. Now, here's my next point. Instead of just saying Michigan should get in no matter what, that's what stupid people say. That's what talking heads say when they want to appease the crowd. Whoever loses this game should not be in the college football playoff. And I know that may seem obvious, but I've seen numerous people like, oh, even if Ohio State loses this game, they should both get in. No. What's the point of a Big Ten conference championship game? What's the point? Why even have them? If you're just going to predetermine the teams, why have them? It was my problem with USC last year. They punished USC for losing the Pac-12 title game, but not another team who didn't even make their championship game. I don't understand it. Being in your conference championship game should matter. And I'm not going to give kudos or props to Michigan and Ohio State for scheduling McDonald's University and Blockbuster Community College on their football schedules and beating them 60-0. That's just what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to reward them for having cupcakes on their schedules. They beat Penn State, both teams, who is always just bad against top 10 matchups, never ready for the moment. Ohio State beat Notre Dame, which has been fraudulent over the past 15 years. We're not so sure how good of a coach Marcus Freeman actually is. So this game should have huge standards. Whoever wins this game should be a lock to go to the college football playoff because they're going to be in their conference championship game. Whether they win it or not, beating one or the other is a big deal to me. But we as fans, as members of the media, need to hold conference championship games to a higher standard. We should not just grandfather in teams, because if we do, what's the point of playing games? Just put Alabama, Michigan, Clemson, or Ohio State, Georgia in every year. Don't even worry about playing the games. Hold those teams to a higher standard. With all that being said, I am all on board with the America's Team motto. I am all on board with America's Team Michigan. I expect them to roll Ohio State. I expect them to advance to the college football playoff. I expect them to not only beat Ohio State, I expect them to roll them. I expect them to be in the college football playoff. We'll see what happens from there. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens in Columbus after Michigan comes a-knocking and knocks out the Buckeyes. Thank you so much for tuning into the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, whether you listen to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, for free on the iHeartRadio app. We appreciate however you consume this show. We're closing in on 500 subscribers on YouTube if you're watching there. So go ahead, consider hitting the subscribe button. Maybe not. I'm not going to beg you. If you like the show, go for it. If you don't, okay, that's cool too. Write in the comment section why you don't like me. I love watching those. I think they're hilarious every time. The people that think I'm in my mother's basement and have never touched a sport before, I think that is just hilarious. Those are the type of people that make this show go, that make this show tick. I love interacting with you guys on social media. It has been awesome. I appreciate everyone who hate watches, who love watches, who hate listens, who love listens. Leave a comment, leave a like, leave a 5-star review, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate everything you do for the show. It's not possible without you, the consumer. So until next week, I can't wait to have more for you. Maybe I look stupid for picking Michigan. I don't think so. But until next week, it's been the Ben Garcia Show.